Well, let me tell you something. Menu RX is awesome because, folks, you know the names of those big box diet stores, diet programs. And what those places do is really just take your money because their program is the same for everybody. Yeah, I guess if you're a different weight, it's slightly different, but basically it's the same program. That doesn't work. Everybody's body works differently. So if you're sick of fad diets or big box diets that don't really provide results, go to Menu RX. You see the website there, menu-rx.com. The guy in charge, Dr. Jake May, he's a Clevelander. He's moved down to New Orleans as part of this weight loss clinic. He's a scientist and a nutritionist. He's worked with me. Obviously, I got a long way to go, but I'd be, believe it or not, even in significantly worse shape. With Menu RX, they help you with a diet plan or a plan to get you in better shape, but also one-on-one conversations when you're stressed out and dealing with things that are really tough in terms of weight loss and eating challenges. So whether you're chasing peak performance, building your dream body, or seeking optimal longevity, Menu RX will help you reach your goals. Go to menu-rx.com to get your consultation today. That's menu-rx.com.
And with that, we are thrilled to welcome in Yahoo Sports senior NFL writer Jori Epstein to the show. Jori, how you doing today? Thanks so much for joining the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. Great to be with y'all.
Yeah, thank you, Jori. We saw your article that you recently wrote about the Browns quarterback situation, and it is fascinating. I mean, in all the years we've been covering the Browns, there's never been a shortage of drama when it comes to many things, including their quarterback situation, and it's no different now. So, for those who haven't had a chance to read your column about it, what's your take on this Browns quarterback situation, as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I came up in this business through Dallas with Jerry Jones. So I know you guys know, and I know that drama is good for the business that we are in. But really what was interesting to me is that are there some people around the league who are asking why did the Browns draft both Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders? Of course, this is unusual. You don't usually draft quarterbacks in the 3rd and 5th round both, especially when you have whole bunch of guys on the roster already, a lot of different moving pieces. Obviously, Deshaun Watson's still in the building, even if he's not expected to play this year, if at all, again, for the Browns. But I think when you look at it, what was interesting to me is that people were not as critical about it as I expected them to be. I talked to sources with 5 different teams who actually said they understood the gamble that Cleveland was taking. They said that quarterback is such an inexact science and there are so many misses that having 2 at-bats can be better than 1. I think where the argument kind of breaks down is this idea of, first of all, this is not just a logic problem. There are human emotions involved in motivation. And secondly, there are a limited number of snaps, particularly with the first team guys, when you also have Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett in the picture. But I do think that I was surprised by how many people around the league understood that, hey, maybe Dillon Gabriel turns out as a really solid back, not to put a ceiling on him, and Shedeur Sanders ends up getting rid of some of the football distractions on the off-field, getting focused, and his talent is able to make him a starter. And the last thing I'll say is that the reason that people weren't so concerned about drafting Shedeur Sanders after Dillon Gabriel is because most of the evaluators I talked to around the league said that they had a 5th, 6th round grade on Dillon Gabriel and a closer to 2nd round, if not late 1st, when you get into the supply-demand element on Shedeur Sanders. And so the value for Shedeur was really strong.
That's fascinating.
Jori, I have a conspiracy theory. Let me see if we can just go ahead and just throw that out there and see if you
have enough
with
conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I might as well just do that. It's good for business, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the Browns, they took Dillon Gabriel and they was like, you know what, we're going to take him higher than we probably should. And then that will cut the conversation off from Shedeur Sanders. We got three quarterbacks. We already got our guys. We're good. I don't think that they thought Shedeur Sanders would keep falling, and he kept falling. And then they started to look around in the 5th round and was like, we might as well go ahead and get him, man. At least we can talk about something during the offseason. Who knows? He might be Dillon Gabriel out. I think they planned on taking Dillon Gabriel so the fans wouldn't clamor for Shedeur Sanders. What are your thoughts?
I don't know if it was so the fans wouldn't clamor for Shedeur Sanders, but I do agree with you that there's a psychological element here, which is that someone I talked to said that they felt had Shedeur just gone to Vegas, even in the second or third round, there would have been this element of, yeah, I can do it. I'll be that guy, even if not right now. Maybe Geno gets this year, I get next year. And now there's a different level of chip on your shoulder because it's not just how many teams passed on you repeatedly for 5 rounds, 4.5 rounds. It's also the fact that even in your own draft class, your team didn't pick you first at your position. I mean, that is a different level of chip. So I do think that there is a motivational element here that's working with Shedeur.
You know, Jory, with Kevin Stefanski taking the offense back, you know, you've seen some of the people that they drafted in this class. You obviously get a Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, you get the 2 quarterbacks, you get Harold Fanning, and you get Schlesinger from UCLA. Out of those, which one of those do you think makes an immediate impact and is something that the Browns need?
Ooh, okay. Do we count Mason Graham or you don't want Mason Graham in there?
You can count Mason Graham as well. A lot of people was upset about that pick. Sorry about that. A lot of people was mad about that. They wanted Travis.
Well, I know you were mentioning them, and I was like, maybe we're just assuming first round grade. Okay, then let's talk about that. I'm gonna pivot you a little bit here because it was so funny. Before I read this article about Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, I actually wrote an article about that trade on Thursday night. Because again, I don't know why I became like a Browns defender that weekend. It was totally not my intention. But I had people from 7 different teams tell me on Thursday night that they thought that Jacksonville got hosed in that trade. And their idea was, okay, maybe a generational player. But first of all, the Browns, sorry if this is offensive to some people in the market, aren't ready to win this year and also don't have the win now mandate that the Giants have. I mean, I think you can see the difference in what the Giants did in the first round and what the Browns did in the first round and see one of them is about long-term stability and multi-year success. And the other is, hey, Brian Dable and Joe Shane in New York are not going to have their jobs if they don't win this year and create hope for the future. But when you look at it, to get a first and second round pick to go down 3 spots, I mean, that was a fantastic move. And oh, by the way, even if you had gotten Travis Hunter at receiver, who's throwing the ball to him? We don't know. So I all of which is to say, I totally agreed with the trade. I thought it was fantastic value. It was historical value for a reason because most people wouldn't do it. But Jacksonville had a new young general manager who said, I just need to make a splash and set the tone. And so I think it's worth it. And then when you look at it, they still got a plug-and-play guy in Mason Graham at defensive tackle, and I think we've seen what Jim Schwartz can do with that front. You get a certain level of value by pairing him with Miles and other guys on that line. So, I mean, that was my favorite pick.
Jory, I think 2 things can be true. The trade was a great trade in terms of draft pick value, and we're all still a little nauseous that Travis Hunter is not a Brown. Whether we agree. I mean, they're not ready to win. Their over-under's 5.5. I mean, you know, most likely they're going to win 5-6 games this season, something like that. But we had been dreaming of Travis Hunter. So even though Graham's a good player and the trade made sense from a value standpoint, we're still a little bummed about it.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely not fun or enticing for the fans. And that was what was kind of interesting to me is this idea of we saw both in Jacksonville and in Las Vegas who drafted Ashton Genty in the first round, this idea of just take these guys, even if they're not necessarily great value for what you're getting in them. And then you have someone who like Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski who they do have a little bit more job security and a little more of an assurance. I think what's funny is that you kind of had this like very low-key smart but not sexy pick in the first round, and then you go and take 2 quarterbacks. To me, what was good about this is that it allowed you to have a great option for a first round quarterback next year. And that way, even if you ended up winning more games than you wanted this year or not winning wanted than you expected this year, you would still have that draft capital. So that's why I will say that taking 2 quarterbacks later, in my opinion, undermined a little bit what you did at the beginning of the draft.
Jory, I'm trying to figure this out. How are they going to do these reps? You got 3 preseason games, and usually the starter going into it doesn't really play all that often in the beginning. Like, it's like I'm looking around like, okay, so what are we doing here? Like, are you going to have Kenny Pickett? Is he going to start getting reps first, or is he going to sit the first game? How do you think they break this down with only 3 preseason games in the pecking order?
Yeah, if I were them, some of this would depend on how guys have been doing during training camp since they'll have a lot of practices between now and then. But if I were them, what I would do is I would say, okay, first game, you have the better of Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel, whoever's been more impressive through OTAs and training camp, that person starts the first half, if not maybe 3 quarters, and the other one comes in for the second half or the last quarter. So for the first 2 games, you have one of them starting one game, the other starting the other game, so that they each get time with, if not the ones, the first team starters for the preseason game, and you don't get Kenny Pickett involved. You certainly don't get Joe Flacco involved. And then if you're thinking by the third preseason game that Kenny Pickett is going to be your starter for the first week into the next 5-6 weeks at least, then you have Kenny Pickett play somewhere between a series and a quarter for that third game, and then still give it to Shedeur and Dillon. But again, I'm curious what you guys think in the market. Do you expect them to carry 4 quarterbacks? Because part of the thing about preseason games, I know Roger Goodell took a lot of heat for this when he said, let's get rid of a preseason game and add that 18th game, 2 and 18. Who wants to watch preseason? Is maybe it's not the most entertaining product, but it is a super important element of the roster construction product. And you have to understand by what you're seeing there. I mean, practices are just so watered down in today's NFL. And I'm not saying that's wrong decision, but you need the preseason games to evaluate. So what do you guys expect? I mean, do you expect 3 quarterbacks on the active roster when we come down for the 53-55? Do you expect 4?
Yeah, I expect 3. Yeah,
There is zero chance
Yeah.
that when they kick that ball off in that first Sunday in regular season game that they carry 4. They may carry 4 for the initial 53 because they're going to probably look to trade one.
Right.
But when they kick that ball off, there's no way that they're keeping 4 on the
And they
roster.
can't sneak. Like, I don't think you could put Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel on.
No, if you cut them, somebody's picking
No,
them
you
up.
can't.
I think if it were me, I would trade Kenny Pickett. I know they traded for him, but I'd trade Pickett, keep Flacco and the 2 kids. I think it's going to be between Flacco and Pickett. One of them's going to start this year, probably, and the other's gone, and then you keep the 2 young guys.
Right.
But I just wanted to follow up on what you said, Jordan, because you said what they did with the 2 quarterbacks kind of counteracts a little what they did in the first round, and I agree. Because when they made that trade, the argument, like we were on here, and G. Bush and I were really disappointed that even though we understood the value, we were disappointed. And there was a third panelist who's not here today, Jason, who was like, well, they made this trade to get a quarterback next year, which, okay, we understand that, even though there's no guarantee they'll be able to do that. But then you went and drafted 2 quarterbacks. Now I feel like you got to see them play.
Yeah.
Because if you don't see them play, well, okay, then you wasted those picks if you take a quarterback next year. So it's going to be fascinating not only to see who ends up winning this job, but how much they make it a priority to play both Gabriel and Shedeur, which is a very unique circumstance.
Absolutely. And I think, we could even see multiple quarterback trades for the Browns by the draft next year, I think, because it is possible that you trade either Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco, assuming you can find a trade partner and someone wants them as their backup quarterback, most likely not their starter, at the end of training camp. The other one starts again. There are different people there in the league who feel each is going to be better. I think they just offer different things. And obviously some of this is about Joe Flacco's age. He's 40. He's 17 years older than Shedeur Sanders right now. But then I think also when you look at the ideal outcome from the Browns on Shedeur and Dillon, I think it's very similar to what the Patriots did this year. And obviously that's not an apples to apples comparison because the Patriots took Drake May third overall. And then they took Joe Milton in the 6th round. So it's 2 quarterbacks in the same draft, but vastly different. 1st and 6th, as opposed to 50 picks apart, 3rd and 5th round. But what they did is they said, okay, Drake May looks like he's going to be a bona fide starter. He looks like he played solid enough last year, even when they weren't winning games. Joe Milton played 1 game and looked good enough that the Dallas Cowboys were interested in him as their backup to Dak Prescott. So they traded him for basically, it wasn't exact this, a 5th round pick. And a year after drafting him for a 6th, they're getting a 5th round pick back for him. And now, okay, you feel like you got value out of both of those picks and you don't have a quarterback competition. So ideally, one of these guys is your quarterback starting in 2026, and the other one is a trade asset. But the likelihood of that happening when you have that many guys and that few snaps is really difficult.
All right, Jori, out of the first round picks, which one of those picks do you think comes in and makes an immediate impact for their franchise? And you can't say Tyler Booker for the Dallas Cowboys because I know that's your team.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Ashton Genty, you can debate the fact that the Las Vegas Raiders drafted a tight end in the first round last year and a running back this year. Both of those are considered non-premium positions because they're cheaper to get, so people don't usually want to take them high. But because of that, Brock Bowers was on the scene right away last year, and I think Ashton Genty will be this year when you look at what Chip Kelly is going to do. I mean, he just had insane numbers at the college level, and a lot of that was all of his yards after contact and his ability to break tackles and shed tacklers. And I expect that to carry over to the level. And I mean, it'll be interesting because I think the Raiders are going to be able to pace the Chiefs immediately. But when I look at what that division is doing with the running backs they're drafting and the running backs that they're adding, there's definitely been an investment in that. And I think some of that is just how long can we keep Patrick Mahomes off the field for?
Okay,
Jori,
so I'll make sure I take him in my fantasy this year. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jori, most teams want to emulate good franchises, but the Browns seem to want to emulate another bad franchise that you've covered, the Cowboys, right? And Jimmy's a meddler like Jerry. Now Jerry is the number one ranked meddler in the history of sports, but Jimmy's a meddler, not quite as bad, but he's still a meddler. And they do flashy things and crazy things, and it never works out. Now, the Cowboys at least go to the playoffs before they fall on their face. The Browns just fall on their face in the regular season. Do you see similarities between Jimmy and Jerry Jones? Who, let's face it, Jerry Jones, better actor than he is a GM. He was great in that one scene in Landman. He's terrible GM. My opinion.
It's so funny you say that because my podcast co-host on our Yahoo Sports Inside coverage show last week gave me a hard time that in the context of a Jimmy Haslam conversation, I brought up Jerry Jones. And I actually didn't bring it up as a similarity. I brought it up as contrast of when we have this whole question. I mean, Andrew Barry's getting asked at the press conferences, did Jimmy kind of force this pick? And he's like, Jimmy lets us do our jobs. And my colleague Charles Robinson's like, maybe you should just say no if it's no. But when I look at that and when I look at Jimmy talking about the swing and miss into Deshaun Watson, that is not what Jerry Jones has been since the 90s. I mean, you can say that years ago he was a meddler, but what's the last crazy move? I mean, he wanted Johnny Manziel, took Zach Martin. Zach Martin made the All-Decade team, and you guys got Johnny Manziel. So I think that that's a pretty clear. Now, the Cowboys say, you know what, we have a quarterback. We're going to get offensive linemen routinely in the first round because all of these guys that we get in the first round, we know how to develop them, and they set the pace. So I will say that Jerry Jones is meddling in the sense of the way he talks. He appears on radio twice a week. He talks after the game at the same time as the head coach. He definitely creates a lot of drama entertainment, which is his goal in all that he says. But in terms of, and he takes a long time to get deals done for sure. That is not helpful. But in terms of actually pulling crazy trades or getting in the way of people, he really doesn't do it.
Okay, Jory, that's the way you stand
what's
up
the
for
last
yourself.
crazy move you could tell me that Jerry made? What's the last crazy move you think Jerry made?
Terrell
Owens.
Balls in your court.
The last crazy move that Jerry hiring Mike Holmgren. I think he's a terrible coach.
You mean Mike McCarthy?
Mike McCarthy, not Mike Holmgren. That's who the Browns.
That's
hired.
what we got. He was trash.
Yeah, he was.
You could say that, but it took them to 3 straight 12-5 seasons. So again, do I think that the goal of every franchise should be 12 wins in a playoff berth? No, obviously it should be goal. Yeah. But he had 3 straight 12-win seasons with that team. He had a rough year the first year when everyone got injured in Dak Prescott early on, and the last Dak Prescott. But in the years that his quarterback was primarily healthy, he won 12 games 3 straight years. So I'm not saying that should be the be-all, end-all, but I think it's different than what you're seeing in Cleveland.
So you're saying Jerry is not... He doesn't meddle as much as it seems publicly?
Correct. He talks as if he's going to meddle, but when you get down to the actions and the front office moves, there's not the level of meddling.
All right.
The last bad move that the Cowboys made was in 2019 after they played Tampa Bay in the preseason game. It was this kid by the name of Tyvis Powell that wore number 45 that had a pick in that game that got released.
And they should have picked
and
you
they
up.
should have kept him. They should have kept him.
That's wild. You play for everybody, bro.
I know it.
Jory, we'll
was
wrap
good
it up.
wearing that star, though.
After you just killed me on that Jerry Jones
Yeah, you're
point,
at 1-0. You're at 1-0. You're at 1-0 on him.
She did She did kicking my ass on the Cowboys. Let's talk about food because I always like to wrap up with food. I know you live in New York now. Are you originally from New York, or no? Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Dallas.
Are you originally from? You don't really seem to have I don't know. Is there a Southern accent?
No,
in Dallas?
Dallas is a pretty big place. Well, there's lots of people that
It's a metropolitan area. I do say y'all, but that's about all I got.
You do say y'all. Okay, have you been schooled up by New Yorkers on where to get proper pizza and not going to touristy places?
Oh, I'm like the worst person to ask about this because I'm allergic to gluten and dairy, so I'm so unhelpful.
You're losing 2-0. She shut down your
It's a
food.
bloodbath, Bull.
Wait a second. How is
landslide.
that? She's the one that can't eat pizza. That's not a loss
The
for
point's
me.
already been awarded to Jory. You lose.
That's a loss for her. She can't eat pizza. That stinks. She's allergic to gluten. That stinks. I'm sorry that you're allergic to gluten. So what do you eat?
I know.
What
So
do you
you guys
eat?
should probably come to New York, get some pizza. A lot of chicken.
A lot of chicken.
Big chicken person.
We love that.
All right.
I mean, that's not the only thing, but I'll say that's what I go for.
Of course we're fans.
Yeah, well, chicken doesn't help you get obese. You know what I'm saying?
Fried up.
Not that you want to be. Well, that's true. Fried chicken.
The way we like it.
Thank you, Jory. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.